What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and in this video we're going to rank some players, rank some teams. This is part 2 of the global power rankings and player rankings and tier lists and all that kind of stuff. Before we get into the video, I want to reiterate the disclaimer. So, here's the disclaimer. Yes, all of these players are better than me at playing League of Legends. My goal is to provide information that will help people make smart decisions in regards to betting specifically. So DraftKings, betting on the sports book, betting futures, all that kind of stuff. This means that almost all of the language I use will be relative, meaning that there are good professionals and bad professionals. When I say somebody's good, I mean good compared to other professionals. And when I say bad, I mean bad compared to other professionals. This doesn't mean that I think they're a bad person or should be flamed, which is crazy that I even have to say that, but I always have to. Let's talk about what the different players' rankings kind of mean. So an S player is a player who's good enough to warp a draft or the league-wide meta and can compete on an international stage. This also means that they're a huge difference maker, contribute to the winning difference of their team. Some of my rankings might surprise people in regards to that specifically, because even though you're on a very good team, it doesn't mean that you're actively contributing to the winning difference of your team. A means top of the league, maybe meta-dependent, has a well-documented history and performances, a known quantity. That means that we know what we can kind of expect from this player. And these are just hard and fast rules. They're not like, I'm not 100% sticking to this. If I think that a player has talent, or if I know less about them, it kind of increases the range of outcomes I think they can have. In the B tier can compete with A-level players, but are more prone to large mistakes, and they might have higher talent, like a higher tier of talent, but I'm not 100% convinced that they're going to reach it. C is a league average player, meta and draft dependent, will not reach S and A tier. And for this one, since it's early in the season and some of the players I don't know, it's really tough for me to keep somebody in the C tier. But like if you end the year in a C tier, then I'm probably going to leave you there the next year as well. And then D is a below average player, but doesn't completely handicap their team. And then F is a bad player, hurts their team in general, should be replaced. As time goes on, there will be more and more players in the F tier, I think, because I just think that's kind of how it should be. So let's talk about some of the players in the LCK. We will go. Let's do the team. Let's do the team part of this first, actually. So with that information about the players in mind, I'm going to talk about every single one of these rosters and then talk about the odds that they have to win the LCK. So let's just get into it. So in the global tier list, S means that they're a world's contender. A is that they're going to be competitive internationally. B is a domestic winner international qualifier. C is competitive domestically. D is mid-level domestic. And F is no future. If like when I used to make the reaction videos to the the ESPN rankings, I would go into the depths of like the bottom teams, but I'm not doing that yet. This is really just what tier do you fit into, and then as time goes on, I'll probably break it out into the major region rankings. Like once I finish the LPL, I'll probably do that. So let's start from the bottom and work our way up to the top. So the sports books are expecting Hanwha Life to be the worst team in the league. Let me see. So Dudu was on their team last year. They kind of split time with another top laner. Neither of them really made themselves look great. The reason why I think that this ranking has changed so much and like people's opinions of this team has changed so much is because Chovy left, obviously. That's going to be a negative. So Chovy's gone. Deft is gone. I don't believe in the top lane. On Fleek and Willer. Willer's an okay jungler. I think that as time went on, he played better and better. Do they have a team? Yeah, current rosters. And this is Leaguepedia. Leaguepedia is pretty great. So Dudu and Morgan. I always thought that Morgan was a better player. Morgan had some limitations. at Worlds, but is overall an okay player, I think, still. Going from Chovy to Karras is a big downgrade. Going from Deft to Sam D is probably a side grade. Vista's still there, which is okay, but they're at plus 20,000, meaning if you bet $100 on them to win, you'll get paid back 20,000 if they should win. Nobody's really going to do that. In regards to their future prospects, I think that Willer is a relatively younger player. Yeah, from 2003, born in 2003. Sam D is an okay player, but not a hardcore carry. So this team is really going to depend on Willer's ability to carry, which is somewhat concerning considering I think they had a limited champion pool last split, but they're in last place. I'm fine with that. I don't expect them to be competitive, but they could be competitive, you know. I think that to start off this video, I think we should just throw them in the not the F tier. They have some pieces that I think could be okay, and they're definitely better than Golden Guardians and FlyQuest. But so I'll throw them into the D tier just to be safe. I don't think that it would be completely fair to say that they have no future at all, because they do have a relatively young team. And if you look at a young team in Korea or China and compare it to a quote-unquote young team in North America, you'll see why the future aspect of this could be like somewhat easier to justify. Next up, we have Bro, Fredit Brion. So they have Sword and Morgan in the top lane. I think Morgan's better than Sword, but we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes in the future. Morgan has had like high highs in my opinion. When they were with World Elite, I think that there was a lot of high upside there. In the jungle, we have Umti. They got rid of Chieftain, so that's a good thing. I like seeing that because it means that a team just believes that this is the player they should be playing all the time. So Umti 99 is not super young, but is good enough. Umti and Lava. I'm not a huge fan of Lava. I think they had some okay performances last year, but I'm not a huge fan. This is the kind of team where, like, I like that Hanwha Life has a slightly younger team. So, like, when we do the longer term rankings, I would expect Hanwha Life to be above Bro for like future prospect reasons. They're at plus 1,500, so if you bet 100, you win 1,500. Let's keep moving. Next up is DRX, and I'm surprised that DRX is. I'm surprised that they're this low on the sportsbook. So this is the first one where I'm somewhat interested to kind of see a match or two and then maybe make a bet on them. So Kingen is an okay player. I think that they haven't been on the best teams. So a lot of the performances I think you have to take with a grain of salt. Piosic is a very good jungler. I like Piosic a lot. I think he's probably one of the better junglers in Korea. When they had the DRX roster with Chovy and Deft, I think it was clear that he has an extremely high upside, because when they made Worlds, I guess a year and a half ago, 2 years ago at this point, not only were they contributing to the team, but they were a very positive influence and could carry games. A lot of the times when Chovy was playing more supportive style champions, it was because you have somebody like Piosic who had the upside. So I think that in reality, we should probably be putting them in the C tier. Like, they're just, I think this is just a bad line, and I would expect DRX to do a decent amount better than how they're ranked right now. I think that the Zika, going from Jet to Zika, is a big upgrade. I think they had somebody else during last year as well. But Zika's a really good player. Everybody who watches me knows that I'm a big fan of Zika. Zika was brought into the LPL by Coma. I think it was for Vici Gaming, and that is a huge sign of respect, and it bolsters my confidence in a player like Zika, because Coma is one of, if not the best coach of all time, and has always had a keen eye for talent. So I think that we should give Zika the benefit of the doubt, and I think that it'll be a good year for Zika. I think they'll have a very good season in the LCK. So me being higher on Piosic and Zika is a big reason why my ranking will be different than what the sportsbook has. And then in regards to Beryl, I think that Beryl has always been the better player when it was Damwon's bot lane. I think that Ghost was okay, but Beryl was really the engine of that bot lane. Ghost was a utility AD carry player. I think it's really difficult to give too much credit to Ghost for that reason. Ghost had some good performances and some good matches, had some big carry performances, but not in the sense that they're a hard carry player on a hard carry champion. Like you can pop off on a utility AD carry, but it's just fundamentally different. In my opinion, at least, that's just how I view the game. Because anybody can do it if they're put into the right situation, but it's about creating that situation for yourself. And when teams consistently put you on utility champions, it means they either don't trust you, or the other players are so much better relative to you that they want the game to be in their hands and not yours, which is a negative. I think Deft is still okay. He's good enough to play utility. That's the difference with a player like Deft, is that at his peak, he was like the best AD carry in the world, extremely mechanically gifted. Now, as he gets somewhat older and a little bit less mechanically gifted, still performs at an extremely high level, still a world-class AD carry, but it's less so now. So it's more about utilizing his experience to allow players like Piosic and Zika to carry. So as long as the pick bans are focused on Piosic and Zika being able to carry the mid game, and you don't have Zika like falling into some of the Chovy champions like Set or something, or the equivalent of Set in the new meta, they should be good, or at least better than what the sportsbook thinks. So that's the first one where I'm starting to think to myself, I'd probably want to make a bet on that. Next up is KT. So going from Dorn to Rascal is a side grade. Going from Blank and Gideon to Cuz is probably a side grade, maybe a slight upgrade. Going from Dove and Yukal to Arya, I think this is actually a pretty big upgrade. Arya is a player that we heard about when they were playing in the LJL, and they came to I think it was MSI, and they were talking about how the team had to fundamentally change their roster so that they could get Arya into their lineup for like domestic import reasons. So that could be part of the reason why they're at plus 3,000. Maybe a lot of players in Korea don't necessarily believe in, or maybe the sportsbook doesn't believe Arya is that level of player. But Rascal is a good player. Cuz is okay. Arya is a good player, if not great player. Like Arya could be one of the better players in mid in Korea. Like Arya, I think he's like 18 or 19. 21. Okay, a little older than I thought, but it's fine. It's fine in the sense that if KT Rolster believes in Arya right now, then they'll have a couple of years where they can try to be competitive internationally, and I think that's in line with having aiming. Aiming is one of the better AD carries in the world. So you have a very strong AD carry, and then Life. Most people don't like Life for DraftKings reasons, but Life is good enough to be on a competitive team domestically. I think that KT Rolster's upside should have them flirting with domestic winner international qualifier. Like I could see a team like KT Rolster being a very solid team and going into best of fives having a chance to make an upset. So this is another team where I think that public perception is just going to look at this much different than I do. So that's another one that I'm thinking to myself, I might have some interest in betting that number. Let's keep going. So KF, Afrika Freaks turned into the Kwangdong Freaks. So Keen's an okay player for Korean standards. Like that's the thing, is you'll hear me say like a good player or an okay player in Europe or in the LCS. Like if Keen went to one of those regions, he would probably be in the top 5, definitely in the top 10. If you included LCK, LCS, and EU, Keen would be in the top 10 probably. Keen is a player very similar to Summit in the sense that they were both talked about very highly when they came into their team's roster, but since they're not a great organization, it never looked as good as what people wanted it to. And that's the biggest disconnect between the sports books and public perception, is that the sports books know that public perception is going to be bad, so they kind of rank those teams a little lower, when in reality the talent is probably closer to some of the better players. So Keen's a good enough player and is like a league average player at worst in Korea. Elim, coming over from T1, they were a part of like the 3-man jungle situation that they had, which is never a good sign in my opinion. But I think that Elim is probably league average, not necessarily going to completely tank your team. Fate, I'm pretty sure Fate had a good year last year. Fate's an interesting player. I was never a huge fan of Fly. Bang is gone. Teddy's an upgrade, so I hope that they just play Teddy all the time. And then Hoyt, I mean, I don't know much about Hoyt. I recognize the name. I just don't have much to go off of mentally. But I don't think that a team like this deserves to have much different odds than KT and DRX. Like, I would rather bet $100 on KT or DRX than KF right now. I kind of want to put KF in the D tier. Like, I just don't really love the roster. And this is where it's important to say that I will be adjusting these rankings when I do the global rankings. It'll kind of flesh itself out. But let's keep moving. So Nongshim Red Force has a huge amount of turnover in their roster. So going from Rich to Kana is an upgrade. Kana's just a better player. Going from Peanut to Dread is a downgrade. Dread did have some good performances last year, though. I'm probably too low on Dread in general. Going from Gory to BDD. Gory was not a bad player at all. I'm not sure what... I guess they went to FPX, so obviously they're not a bad player. But BDD is a serviceable player. Probably a top three or top 4 mid laner in the LCK. This is the spot that I think is interesting. I think that going from Deokdom to Ghost might actually be a downgrade. I know that Ghost is a world champion, and was given a decent amount of credit for when they were being successful. Obviously, everybody knows that it was Canyon and Showmaker that were the main core of the team. But he's good enough if the rest of your team is really good. I think that the combination of Kana, BDD, and Ghost is pretty interesting because you'll probably want to have Kana taking on more of the carry responsibilities than in a typical team. So theoretically, it would be very interesting to watch. But I think from the name recognition alone, this team is probably overrated. So we'll probably want to bet against them in the beginning of the season. I'm willing to put them right here. Like I legitimately think I like DRX. I think I like DRX's roster more than Nongshim, and that might be highly controversial. I definitely like Kana. I love Kana. Just not sure about the rest of it. Like I think that most people love Kana, most people love BDD, a lot of people are high on Dread, and then I think that most people are too high on Ghost. I don't know Peter. Effort's okay, but Effort's not really a difference maker, in my opinion. So that is Nongshim. Next up we have T1. So Zeus is going to be the full-time top laner. That's totally fine. Wonder is going to be the full-time jungler. Faker is going to be full-time mid lane. Gumayusi, full-time AD carry. And then we have Keria and Asper. Keria is the best support in the world, probably. So I don't know why they have a backup support, really. I think that T1's... This is a surprising number to me. I think that you probably have to take a shot at T1 at this number. They're just kind of consistently ranked too low, which is just really bizarre. I don't know why this happens like this. So T1, I think, is definitely at least in the B tier. They should be probably in the A tier. So I'm gonna put them. I almost want to put them in the S tier. So we're gonna go T1. I'm gonna go T1. What is this about? I forget why I made those So we're going to erase that. T1 LCK. I'm fine with that. Let's go to Gen G. So Gen G is plus 330. Bet 100, win $330. Rascal and Doran, I think it's kind of a side grade. Going from Clid to Peanut, I think, is a slight upgrade. Going from BDD to Chovy is a slight upgrade. Ruler, arguably the best AD carry in the world. And then Lehens is an extremely talented support. So I think that you kind of have to throw them up into A tier at worst. I think that they're a legitimate Worlds contender. I know I was much higher on Gen G than everybody else last year at World. Well, I was much higher on Gen G than most people were at Worlds. I made a video about why I thought Gen G would win Worlds. I think they had a legitimate chance, and I think they outperformed a lot of people's expectations, but not mine. Next up, live, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about Gen G. It's obvious why they have legitimate World aspirations. I mean, Peanut is one of the best junglers in the world. Chovy is one of the best mid laners in the world. Ruler is one of the best AD carries in the world. Lehens is a very talented support player, so that means that Doran and Lehens, all they have to do is not be horrible, and I think that their floor is higher than that, obviously. So should be a very fun team to watch. Should be hyper competitive. Next up is Sandbox. I don't know why this is, like, I'm shocked that Sandbox is this high. I would never bet on them at this number. I don't know if there's something I'm missing. Like, yes, Closer is a very talented player. Why would anyone bet at those odds when the jungler is Kroko? Like, he had some good performances last year, but it was not consistent enough, I think. Dove, I mean, why would you think that going from Summit to Dove is an upgrade? You just wouldn't. Going from Fate to Closer might be an upgrade, but I think Fate was one of the better players on this team last year. I don't know Ice, I don't know Envy, I don't know Kale. So maybe Kale is a superstar, maybe Closer is a superstar, maybe Kroko is a superstar. Probably not. So, I mean, there's no. I feel like these odds are just off. So if somebody else has different odds, please explain to me why this is the way that it is. I'm putting them in the C tier because I think at best they'll be competitive domestically, but I wouldn't be shocked if they were D tier or lower. Like that's the thing about League of Legends. You need a bunch of solid players. You just need a bunch of them, like, to look good. If you have one good player, then you're not going to look good. Like, that's why the stuff with Hanwha Life, everybody trashing like the roster outside of Chovy was just kind of wrong. It's because you cannot play League of Legends that way where it's only Chovy. Like, I probably even spoke in those terms like last year hyperbolically, saying that Chovy was dragging people across the finish line and like dragging them out of the group stage or whatever. I probably said something, or dragging them out of the qualifiers. But even with that being said, the other players on that team were still arguably league average at worst. So going into most matchups, they're going to be as good, if not better, than the opposing team. But again, Live Sandbox's odds, they just seem totally off to me. Let's go to Damwon. So for Damwon, this will be interesting. I obviously think that Canyon and Showmaker are the most likely the best jungle mid duo in the world. I don't love Birdall and Hoya. Neither of them is like. Neither of them have been that great. I think Birdall was on Gen G and had some questionable performances at Worlds. So I think they're like a high upside play, which is nice for a team like Damwon. You already have such a solid jungle and mid lane that you can maybe take a risk on the top lane. But I'm also somewhat unclear. It's unclear why Damwon would do that during like Showmaker and Canyon's primes. So I don't know about that one. Going from Ghost to Deoctom, that might actually be an upgrade. So I understand why they would do that. Going from Beryl to Kellen, I think that Beryl is better than Kellen, but I don't think that it's a big enough difference to really matter. I do think that Beryl, his champion pool was probably underappreciated when Damwon was super good. And now Koma's gone, so I guess that's kind of bad. Did Koma retire? Okay, so I don't know what's going on there, but Damwon is definitely still super good. I think that Damwon should be in the A tier, and then I want to take one of these three teams and put them in S tier, but I don't want to have all three of them in S tier. That's kind of what I was kind of doing. So looking at these rosters, who do I think the best roster from the LCK is? I do like Genji's roster a lot. I do like T1's roster a decent amount. Maybe I'm a little too high on them. So it's between Genji and DRX. So if we go Birdall against Doran, I think that's probably, Doran's the better. Doran's more likely to not lose lane. Birdall's more likely to absolutely destroy the lane. So that's kind of just a stylistic thing. Peanut or Canyon, I think you have to go Canyon. But Peanut is very, very good. Showmaker against Chovy. I don't know. It's really tough. You're kind of splitting hairs at that point. And then you have Ruler and Lehens against Diakdom and Kellen. I think that I'd rather have Ruler and Lehens. So it comes down to, what do you put more emphasis on, mid jungle or your bot lane? So for that reason, I'm going to throw both of them in the S tier. I think that's fair. They're definitely both Worlds contenders. They were both in the semifinals of Worlds last year, right? So I'm fine with that. I don't know which one I'd put first or second. I wouldn't bet either one of these at their odds. I think actually Genji at 330 isn't horrible. It's just you're gonna have to have your money hanging out there for so long that it's probably not worth it. Like, I'd rather take longer shots on some of these other teams and then, potentially bet on Genji later on as a hedge opportunity. But you're also gonna get into, like, if you get into a point where, let's say, DRX makes a crazy run, that by the time you get to the semifinals or finals of the spring split, you'll have a decent hedge opportunity anyways. So it's probably not worth it. Ask yourself, is there a world where DRX is actually the favorite against a team like Genji in the finals? If DRX plays to the level that I think is possible, I wouldn't ever see Genji being an underdog there, unless DRX manages to be dominant or something like that. But I do like DRX's roster a decent amount. So I think that's good enough for the tiers. Let's start going through the different roles. And this is going to help. It's funny because, like, these things kind of just play off one another. Like, your team rankings help your player rankings help your team ratings, team rankings. So I don't have the ages. Actually, I could get them. And like I said, it is important to be cognizant of these players' ages. It's not the only thing that matters, but it does matter. Let me see. We'll save that for another time, I guess. Actually, because I kind of need it. Where did I have the player list before? Sorry about that. LCK spring. Whatever. Waste of time. Sorry about that. So I think that when you look at these types of players, it's really more important to just single out the best players. So I think that Kana, Zeus, I kind of think it's like that. And then I think that you can throw Dorn and Rascal into there because they both have a decent amount of solid performances and can at least hold their own against the other really good top laners. Keen, I think, is a B. Kingen is a B, maybe with the additional side. Dove, I'm not convinced. Dudu has a lot of bad performances. And then Sword and Morgan, I'm gonna make it as C, but I do like Morgan a decent amount. I think that Morgan has the potential to be one of the better top laners in the LCK. So that's basically it. I think that Kana is the best top laner, though, for sure. Big fan of Kana. Then in the jungle, I think that the jungle talent is actually somewhat surprising here. But I think that you can say Canyon is for sure the best. I think that Peanut deserves to be in that A tier. I think that Piosic deserves to be in that A tier. Wunner, I think Wunner had some really good performances at Worlds. I don't know if that makes him an A-level player. It's like borderline B, 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 C. Willer could theoretically be like a very good jungler in the LCK, but I don't... again, there were some big question marks around their champion pool at Worlds, if I remember correctly. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. In the mid lane, I mean, we have so many great mid laners here. I think Showmaker and Chovy are both S's. Faker might be... I think that's probably better. Faker, BDD. Fate, I'm not a big fan of Fate. Arya, Zika, and Closer, I think they all kind of deserve to be higher up. So I think what's going to happen in this region, I think what's going to happen in mid lane in Korea is you're going to have Chovy and Showmaker, who are obviously absolutely insane. Then you have Faker, who has very good performances, but is obviously not as good as he used to be. But it's close enough to be... He's still a world-class player. It's just I think that Showmaker and Chovy give a little bit more consistently and are asked a little bit more from their team in most games. Maybe that'll change this year with T1, but I think that I'm comfortable leaving it like this. But Faker and BDD are both definitely given legacy A's at worst. Even if they're B-level players, you're still going to contribute so much to your team that I think it's ranking them anything lower than A would probably just be insane. And again, this is for the LCK. Like when I throw this into an international thing, maybe they rise even higher. But then you have Arya, Zika, and Closer, and I think all three of those players have good upside where I think they can be competitive for sure with players like Faker and BDD, and theoretically even Chovy and Showmaker. Specifically Zika. I think that Zika is going to be the biggest... Like, if they have a Most Improved Player award, I think that Zika is going to be the Most Improved Player. I know that they're coming from a different region, but people already knew about Zika before they were playing in the LPL. So maybe, like, the biggest shock performance, I think that might be Zika this season. And then Closer getting a full-time job, you know, could be the start of something there. Obviously, there's a lot of hype around Closer as a player. They were thinking that Closer was going to be the incumbent, like, when Faker stepped aside, but... Faker's holding on at this point. So Fate, I'm not a huge fan. Karis and Lava, don't care. And then let's go to AD Carry. So again, from a talent perspective, I think that it is fair to make Gumayusi an S. Ruler is definitely an S. Deokdom is probably an A. Ghost is probably an A. Teddy. Aiming is borderline S. I'll put A. I don't know MV and Ice. I'm going to make these C's. I just don't know enough. Like, Samdi had some good performances when V5 kind of had that run, but I just don't think that they are a great player. And I'd be shocked if Sam D kind of changed, because they were really sort of a Ash one trick at one point. But Gumayusi and Ruler, I think, are probably the two best AD carries in the region right now. Or like a blend of Ruler is the best, and then Gumayusi has huge upside. So you kind of want to like acknowledge both aspects of that. And then last but not least, we have, I mean, Keria, like I said, I genuinely think that Keria is just the best support in the world. I think Lehens is serviceable. Kellen, I'm not sure. Effort, definitely not a difference maker. Hoyt, not a difference maker. Life, not a difference maker. Beryl, I think you have to kind of make an A. Kale, Vista, Delight. Like, until they distinguish themselves consistently, it's tough to move supports much higher or much lower. Like, because you don't, I don't listen to their comms and everything like that. I don't know how much of their game plan can really be attributed to their support. Like, I don't know who are shot callers and who's not. So it just comes down to what I can see on tape and what I think is actionable and can bet on. So, and most of the time, supports are just not going to create an actionable edge, because their roles are generally very defined in the sense that they're meant to support the rest of the team. So they're very restricted by the players that they're playing with. All right, so that's basically it. I think that... Oh, I can do the region ranks. So again, for the region ranks, I'm only going to do S and A. I probably think that Lehens is better than Beryl. It's just that Beryl has been on such a better team in recent history. For AD carry, I think it's Ruler, then Gumayusi. I think that it's probably Aiming, then Teddy, then Deoctom, and then Ghost. And again, part of that is talent, and part of that is play style and what they're generally asked to do. For mid lane, I'm fine giving it to Showmaker over Chovy. It's very close though. In third, I kind of think it's Zika. Zika's just kind of insane. And then I think Faker is still better than BDD. And then I think that Closer's upside is probably higher than Arya's upside, but they're both noteworthy. Just keep moving. Canyon, I think, is definitely the best. Piosic could be the second best. I don't mind giving it to Peanut, though. Then Piosic, then Warner. I'm not going to split hairs with like the B-level players. And then last but not least, we have the top lane. So in the top lane, I think it's pretty clear Kana is the best. Birdall and Zeus are interesting. I think that I'll make them 2A and 2B because I think that Doran and Rascal are not replacement level players, but they're both good enough to like not lose you a bunch of your games, which is something that we can't necessarily attribute to Kingen, Dove, Dudu, Sword, or Morgan. Like, we know Morgan can actually lose you games because of their champion pool sometimes. But I'm comfortable with that. I think that's a good ending point for this video. Thanks for watching. Watch out for part 3 of this. We're going to go through the LPL, and then I'm sure there'll be a part 5 or 6. And we'll start getting into like specifically, well, there'll probably be a part 5 and a part 6 where we do players in one and then teams in the other, and we do like a full ranking. I'm also thinking about doing shorter videos like for each player or for each team. I don't know what kind of appetite there is for that, but it might be a little easier for public consumption. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about doing right now. But that's all you're getting from me today. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.